Talking first quarter GDP figures now. Yemi Kell, Statistician General at the National Bureau of Statistics in Nigeria, joining us from Abuja. Yemi, thanks for joining us today on Power Lunch. Just looking at that first quarter number, 6.17% growth is what we saw coming through, and that of course is a drop off from the previous quarter. We know that agriculture has fallen back in terms of its growth rate, 4.17%, and the oil sector also underperforming and continues to underperform, and that of course a big issue given the fact that 90% of foreign exchange reserves come from the oil and gas sector. But just walk us through some of the key pressure points that Nigeria faced in the first quarter.
Yes, thank you. Virtually there was a decline in almost all the sectors, both in the oil and non-oil sector. And in particular, agriculture had some problems in that, well, typically in the first quarter of the year, agricultural sector records low growth. But in addition, this quarter you have additional increase in costs as a result of, partly as a result of the partial removal of subsidy. You also have issues where security problems in some of the producing states, agricultural producing states, created the problems for the farmers, whereby you have a situation where lower farmland is brought into cultivation. Also because there is a limit to how much you can bring into cultivation, I guess we're beginning to see economies of scale beginning to slow down. Depending on which sector you look at, whether it's the services or the producing sector, the industrial sectors, it's usually a combination of weaker consumer demand because costs of living has risen slightly as a result of, again, partially as a result of the fuel subsidy removal. And these costs are rising faster than output growth. So because of that, you have several sectors in the economy in the first quarter that came down. Of course, as you mentioned, the oil sector.
Yeah. Let's look at the oil sector and the outlook for the rest of the year. The oil sector came down as a rate.
Could you say that again? I didn't.
As you say, the oil sector has continued to underperform. It grew by negative 2.32% in the first quarter. What growth rate are you looking at for the remainder of the year? And I suppose, what are the key factors that will feed into that growth rate?
Well, the oil sector was largely as a result of lower production, and production was as a result of production problems by some of the oil majors. We are hoping that this will be sorted out as we go to the next quarter. And since this has nothing to do with consumer demand, it has nothing to do with anything else apart from some disruption in some of the oil producing companies, which we assume they would have fixed by now. We expect that once oil production picks up, with the prices of oil still at the high levels, we think that growth in the oil sector will improve significantly. And by the second quarter in the non-oil sector, we expect many of the reforms of government to cushion some of the impacts of the fuel subsidy rise to begin to kick in. This would allow for greater consumer demand and for the economy to adjust more quickly. So we expect that in the second quarter, the growth in the economy will pick up to 7-8%.
What is your outlook for the agricultural sector right now? Because very much hinged on what type of rainfall Nigeria gets. But as I said, that slowdown is something we've seen. Is this a trend that is starting to set in?
Well, agriculture in Nigeria is largely subsistence. So again, like I mentioned earlier, it's about bringing in more land into cultivation rather than improvements in productivity, and there's a limit to how much new land you can bring into under cultivation. Now, if you have security problems in the north, where most of our agricultural products are produced, then of course you're reducing the ability of farmers in those areas to open up new land. And I believe that if once these problems are taken care of, we'll see a return to better agricultural production. Yes, in terms of rainfall in the first quarter, year on year, it slowed down in this quarter relative to the previous quarter, 2011. Again, this is rain-fed agriculture. It's not something that it's something that is currently out of the control of the economy. So again, we are dependent on having good rainfalls. The projections suggest that rainfall should be better in the second quarter. So we are hoping that a combination of these factors would help to will result in an improvement in agricultural output in the second quarter.
Yemi, what's the most worrying trend right now for you when it comes to growth in Nigeria?
Well, I think it is probably security. I think the Central Bank of Nigeria brought that. I think it's two things for me. It's security. It's also, that's domestic. And secondly, it's the possibility of contagion as far as the problems in Europe slow down in the US as well as China. And these three areas are our main trading partners. I think those are the two main areas of concern as far as growth is concerned going forward.
Let's focus on the changing shape of the economy and what it might look like 3 to 5 years down the line, because if you're looking at the agricultural sector contributing 34.4% of the overall GDP, that's from 35.14%. Trade has gone up to 23.39%, and telecoms also still a big contributor and a big mover in terms of growth, sitting now at contributing 7.29%. So overall, you've got shifting patterns of spend, a shifting economy, the shape of the economy. What type of economy do you see in 5 years' time?
Well, I think this is actually the pattern. If you look at most other countries, from moving from a developing country into an emerging economy into a developed country, they always go through that phase. We are seeing that services are going to contribute a lot more to the Nigerian economy, and this is actually where we want to go as far as rapid industrialization is concerned. So actually, in my opinion, this is actually a positive trend where agriculture, though growing, will be contributing a lot less to the overall economy, and the services sector, which is more sustainable, will contributing a higher share of overall GDP growth. And of course, that's as the middle class in Nigeria keeps expanding, as consumer demand keeps increasing. I think the economy will quickly start approaching emerging market status and then towards developed market status. So
what
this,
date are
is a
you
positive
thinking
trend for the Nigerian economy?
At what year do you think that will take place?
Looking at the current trends in the Nigerian economy, the current growth rates in the Nigerian economy, I'll believe within the next 5 to 10 years, we should have a situation where Nigeria is firmly among at least the current emerging strong economies in the world.
Yeah, thank you.
We're already rated as a middle income country currently, so I think this could only go stronger from here.
Thank you so much for that, Yemi Kale, Statistician General from the National Bureau of Statistics, joining us in Abuja.